More than 10 Russian soldiers on an inflatable boat were killed in less than a minute, just as they believed they were reaching the far bank. There was no direct engagement, no warning. Only a brief moment when the boat entered the view of a Ukrainian UAV. From that point, everything moved too fast to react. One boat struck. One truck stopped. One soldier exposed. Each moment can become the start of serious losses within seconds once detected from above. The concern is not only that single boat. It is that the entire pattern of Russian movement is becoming a growing risk. So what happened after that boat was spotted? And how can such a small target allow Ukraine to create pressure across multiple layers of the battlefield at the same time? Let's take a closer look with military force and understand how modern drone warfare is rapidly reshaping the pace and danger of every movement. Ukraine's FPV drones are changing what counts as a target. In earlier stages of the war, the obvious targets were tanks, armored vehicles, artillery systems, and command posts. Those targets still matter, but the hunting zone has widened beyond heavy equipment. A Russian soldier walking alone, a pickup carrying supplies, a small truck moving through trees, a Bukanka minivan near a front road, or a vehicle waiting under cover can all be attacked once they appear under Ukrainian observation. This is why Russian movement has become harder to protect. A target no longer needs to be large or expensive to justify a strike. It only needs to support the war effort. If it carries ammunition, food, fuel, radio equipment, spare parts, or fresh troops, it becomes part of the battlefield system. If it helps a unit move, hold ground, repair a shelter, or keep pressure on Ukrainian lines, it can be hunted. Small vehicles are especially exposed. They are cheaper than tanks, but they often carry what keeps a front line alive. A Bukanka can bring supplies to a forward position. A pickup can move men or equipment along a tree line. A truck can carry logs, fuel cans, boxes, or tools needed to strengthen a position. When these vehicles are hit, the real loss is not only the vehicle itself. It is the broken connection between the rear and the troops at the front. FPV drones also create a psychological burden for Russian soldiers. Troops can no longer assume that leaving cover for a few seconds is safe. Running across open ground, moving between buildings, or trying to escape after a first strike can all become dangerous moments. The drone does not need to hold terrain like infantry. It only needs to find movement, close the distance, and force the target into a decision that may come too late. This pressure is not built from one dramatic strike alone. It grows from repetition across many small moments. One soldier is spotted. One vehicle is followed. One supply route is interrupted. Then another target appears in a different area, and the same pattern begins again. Over time, these strikes turn ordinary movement into a risk commanders must calculate before every short trip. That is the larger change now taking shape. Ukraine is expanding the hunting zone beyond the trench line, turning roads, tree lines, staging points, and rear routes into spaces where Russian movement can be measured from above. If movement on land is this exposed, the next question is more dangerous for Russia. What happens when the same drone network starts watching river routes? A small inflatable boat may look like a simple way to move troops across water, but in Ukraine, this kind of movement has become extremely dangerous. For Russian infantry, a river crossing can seem like a quiet route around a defended line. The boat is small, the crew is limited, and the path can be chosen away from main roads. On paper, that may reduce exposure to mines or artillery. In reality, the open surface of the water becomes a trap once a Ukrainian reconnaissance UAV starts watching from above. The danger often begins before the boat reaches the opposite bank. A reconnaissance UAV can follow its path, read its direction, and keep the target under observation as the soldiers move forward. The crew below may see only water, reeds, and the far shore, but the drone operator can see the whole crossing as one exposed line. This gives Ukraine time to choose the weakest point of the movement. The boat is most exposed when it is too far from the starting bank to retreat and still too far from the landing point to escape quickly. At that moment, The troops have little cover, little space, and almost no ability to change formation. Speed may help them for a short time, but it cannot protect them once they are locked in the drone's view. An FPV drone does not need to destroy a heavy armored vehicle in this situation. It only needs to hit a fragile inflatable craft, the engine area, or the soldiers packed inside. A small boat offers no armor and no safe compartment. One strike can stop the crossing, throw the group into confusion, and turn the river itself into part of the kill zone. The attack does not necessarily end when the boat is damaged. If some soldiers reach the shore, they still face the most dangerous minutes of the operation. They may be wet, separated, injured, or carrying only part of their equipment. They need time to regroup, check weapons, find cover, and understand where Ukrainian positions are located. But that time may not exist. Bomber drones or other strike drones can follow the first hit and attack the landing group before it becomes a real assault force. The same UAV network that detected the crossing can keep watching the riverbank. This means Ukraine is not only striking the boat, it is hitting the soldiers at the moment when they are least organized and most exposed. This is why the inflatable boat matters beyond the size of the target. Ukraine is disrupting the full movement cycle, not just destroying one craft. The approach to the river is watched. The crossing is tracked. The boat is struck at the exposed point. The landing group is attacked before it can stabilize. If another boat comes to assist, that second movement can also be detected and targeted. For Russia, this creates a serious tactical problem. Small boats are useful because they are flexible and harder to notice than larger vehicles. But that advantage collapses when UAVs can monitor the waterway and guide FPV strikes. A route that depends on surprise becomes dangerous when surprise is lost before the soldiers arrive. This forces Russian commanders to treat even a small crossing as a high-risk operation instead of a routine movement. Water is no longer a safe gap between two lines. It is another watched corridor where movement can be detected, tracked, and broken apart. If Russian troops cannot cross small rivers without being seen from above, then every attempt to shift forces around. Ukrainian positions becomes harder to protect. The boat attack is therefore only one visible example of a deeper system, because Ukraine is reducing the time between spotting a target and destroying it. Ukraine's most dangerous advantage is not only the drone itself, but the speed of the chain behind it. On many parts of the battlefield, the pattern is clear. A reconnaissance UAV sees movement from above. It follows the target to confirm direction, behavior, and value. Then the information is passed to an FPV team or strike drone team waiting for the right moment. Detection and fire can now happen in a much shorter window. This is what makes the kill chain so important. The first drone does not always need to attack. Its main job is to find the target, keep eyes on it, and turn movement into usable information. A soldier crossing open ground, a small vehicle leaving a tree line, or a group moving near a riverbank can be watched before they understand that they have already been placed inside a firing sequence. Once the coordinates are passed, the second part begins. The FPV drone or strike drone does not need to search from the start. It receives direction from the observer above. That means the attack can arrive while the target is still exposed, still moving, or still trying to reach cover. For troops on the ground, the danger is not only that a drone may come. The danger is that the drone may already be on the way before they realize they have been seen. This changes the value of time. In older battlefield logic, a unit might believe that short exposure was acceptable. A few seconds in the open, a quick run between buildings, or a brief stop on a road might not seem fatal. But under a short kill chain, even a small delay can become enough for Ukraine to locate, assign, and strike the target. The margin for mistake becomes thin. The real strength of this model is the connection between observation and action. FPV drones are cheaper than many traditional weapons, but cost is not the only reason they matter. Their value rises when tied to reconnaissance, fast communication, and trained operators who can turn a sighting into a strike. A cheap drone used blindly is one thing. A cheap drone guided by a watching UAV becomes part of a larger system. This also forces Russian units into difficult choices. If they move quickly, they may make noise, leave tracks, and expose themselves in open areas. If they move slowly, they give Ukrainian observers more time to follow them. If they stop, they may become fixed targets. If they scatter, coordination becomes harder. In each case, the pressure begins before the explosion, because drones change how every movement is judged. The effect is strongest where cover is limited or movement is predictable. Open fields, forest roads, riverbanks, damaged villages, and supply routes all create moments when troops or vehicles must appear in the open. Ukrainian reconnaissance UAVs can wait for those moments. Strike drones can then close the distance before the target rebuilds concealment or leaves the danger area. That is why the shortened kill chain is more than a technical detail. It is a battlefield rhythm that punishes exposure. It turns seconds into decisions and movement into risk. When observation, communication, and attack are compressed into one fast sequence, survival depends on reacting faster than the drone network can complete the cycle. And as this speed increases, the pressure will spread toward the vehicles and supply links that keep Russian units operating behind it. Russian logistics vehicles are becoming priority targets because they keep the front line alive. A truck, pickup, Bukanka van, or material carrier may not look as dramatic as a tank, but it can be just as important to daily combat. These vehicles move ammunition, food, water, batteries, radios, spare parts, fuel cans, medical supplies, and replacement troops toward forward positions. Without that flow, even a large unit can begin to lose strength. A front line does not survive on soldiers alone. It survives on movement from the rear. Ammunition must arrive before a firing position runs low. Water and food must reach troops who cannot leave their shelters. Radios and batteries must be replaced so units can keep communicating. Material must be moved forward to repair shelters, reinforce trenches, and rebuild damaged positions. When FPV drones hit these vehicles, the result is larger than one destroyed truck. The cargo may burn. The road may be blocked. The driver may be lost. The unit waiting for supplies may not receive what it needs at the right time. That delay can change what happens at the front. A platoon with fewer rounds fires less. A position without repair material becomes easier to damage again. A unit without working communication equipment becomes harder to command. A group waiting for replacement troops may be forced to hold with fewer men than planned. This is how logistics pressure changes the tempo of battle. It may not create a spectacular image like the destruction of a heavy armored vehicle, but it can reduce the ability of Russian forces to keep fighting at the same pace. The damage builds through delay, shortage, and uncertainty. A single lost supply vehicle may be replaced, but repeated strikes force commanders to spend more time solving basic movement problems. That pressure also changes how Russia must move supplies. Larger convoys can attract attention. Smaller vehicle groups may be harder to detect, but they carry less cargo and may need more trips. Side roads may offer concealment, but they can be muddy, damaged, mined, or exposed to drones. Night movement may help for a short time, but it does not remove the risk if UAVs are already watching key routes. This creates a hard choice. Move too much at once, and the column becomes a visible target. Move too little, and the front line receives supplies too slowly. Wait too long, and the unit ahead may lose strength before the next delivery arrives. For Russian troops, this means the road behind them can become almost as important as the position in front of them. If supplies do not arrive, a trench can still be occupied, but its combat value begins to fall. The soldiers may remain in place, yet their ability to fire, communicate, repair, and rotate can weaken step by step. That is why Ukraine's strikes on logistics matter beyond the immediate explosion. They attack the system that allows Russian pressure to continue. They turn rear movement into a gamble, forcing Russia to protect vehicles that keep assault units alive. But Ukraine is not stopping at the vehicles that carry supplies. The next layer of pressure reaches the tools that allow Russia to observe, command, and fire across the battlefield. Ukrainian drones are now reaching deeper into the systems that allow Russian units to see, communicate, and fire. The targets are no longer limited to soldiers in the open or vehicles moving along a road. Antennas, control points, artillery pieces, and camouflaged positions are also being hunted because they support the larger combat network. These systems help Russian forces understand the battlefield and pressure Ukrainian positions. An antenna can look like a small target, but its role can be much larger than its size. It can support radio communication, drone control, signal relay, or coordination between forward troops and rear command posts. If it is destroyed, the loss may create confusion across a local sector. A unit can still have soldiers and weapons, but if orders become slower and information becomes weaker, its ability to react begins to fall. Control points face the same problem. They help organize movement, drone activity, fire missions, and battlefield reporting. When Ukrainian UAVs detect these sites, FPV drones can strike before the operators have time to relocate. Even a small hit can force a pause, because cables, screens, batteries, terminals, and radios are not always easy to replace near the front. That pause can reduce the speed of command at the exact moment Russian units need quick decisions. Artillery is another key layer. A 152mm self-propelled howitzer or a 122mm towed gun can keep Ukrainian positions under pressure from distance. These weapons allow Russian forces to hit trenches, roads, shelters, and assembly areas without direct contact. But once reconnaissance drones find them, camouflage becomes less reliable. A gun hidden near trees or inside a prepared position can still be identified by movement, tracks, heat, firing activity, or repeated use of the same site. Destroying artillery changes the local balance. It may not silence an entire front, but it can reduce shelling in one area and give Ukrainian troops more room to repair, rotate, or hold. It also forces Russia to move guns more often, hide them better, or accept greater risk each time they fire. The weapon may have range, but it still needs a position, a crew, ammunition, and communication links to remain useful. This is why the attack on hidden equipment matters so much. Traditional camouflage is still useful, but it is no longer enough by itself. Nets, branches, dugouts, and cover can delay detection, yet UAVs can return, compare patterns, and wait for signs of activity. Once a target reveals itself through movement, firing, or communication, it can be brought into the strike sequence. Ukraine is therefore striking the battlefield's nervous system. It is not only breaking machines. It is weakening the eyes, ears, voice, and firepower that help Russian units operate together under growing tactical pressure and uncertainty. When command, observation, and fire support are hit at the same time, the impact no longer stays inside one position. It begins to spread across the rhythm of Russian operations. When several Ukrainian drone units operate at the same time, the battlefield becomes harder for Russian forces to read and control. Units such as Magyar birds show that drone warfare is no longer just a support tool. It has become an organized hunting system where observation, target selection, and strike teams can work across different parts of the front. One group may watch open ground. Another may search for vehicles. Another may track artillery or hidden positions. Together, they create a wider pressure field that is difficult to escape. This matters because battlefield safety often depends on distance, timing, and cover. Russian troops may believe that a short movement between shelters is manageable. A vehicle crew may think a quick trip along a tree line is low risk. A gun team may assume that camouflage gives enough protection after firing. But when drone teams are active in several places at once, those assumptions become weaker. A target that escapes one drone may still be seen by another. The reported destruction of multiple Russian air defense systems shows how far this pressure can reach. Drone units are not only striking small targets near the trench line, they can also help expose and attack valuable systems that protect the wider battlefield. Once air defense assets are damaged or forced to move, the sky becomes harder for Russia to secure. That gives Ukrainian drones more room to search, follow, and strike. The larger effect is coordination. Infantry hunters, logistics hunters, artillery hunters, and teams focused on hidden equipment do not need to win one massive battle to change the situation. Their value comes from working in layers. Each layer removes another piece of Russian freedom. Movement becomes harder. Supply runs become more dangerous. Fire support becomes less stable. Hidden sites become less reliable. For Russian commanders, this creates a constant planning problem. They must watch every road, staging point, firing position, and short route. Even a small movement can become dangerous if it happens under observation. That is why the loss of safe movement may matter more than any single destroyed target. When drone pressure appears in many areas at once, Russian forces operate under a permanent threat from above. From this point, the most dangerous effect is no longer one vehicle burning or one position being hit. It is the slow attrition created when this pressure returns every day. The most dangerous effect of Ukraine's drone campaign may not be one spectacular explosion, but the pressure that returns every single day. A single soldier, a supply pickup, an inflatable boat, an antenna, or an artillery piece can each look like a separate target. But together, they form the working parts of a combat system. When those parts are cut again and again, the damage spreads beyond the immediate strike. Logistics slows. Command becomes less certain. Fire support loses rhythm. Movement becomes a risk that must be calculated before every short route. For Russia, the deepest problem is not only losing equipment. It is losing confidence in where movement is still safe. If even small crossings, short supply runs, and hidden positions can be watched from above, then the battlefield itself begins to close in. So how long can an army keep attacking when every movement may already be seen? Modern warfare shows how technology can reshape conflict, increase pressure, and affect lives far beyond the battlefield. Understanding these changes helps build awareness about both the reality of war and the importance of peace. Subscribe to Military Force for clear, simple analysis on weapons, strategy, and the global forces shaping today's conflicts.